I'm gonna go ahead and yeah, there. I think you could hear that. We're being recorded. That's fine.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, it's no
cool.
problem.
Yeah, yeah. So,
It's fine if I can go get my coffee. Would that be all right? I just
hey, you're
started it.
early. Yeah, I'm very charitable. I got my coffee right here. See, I'm
Great.
ready. All
Hey,
right.
but I don't even know if I know your name. I'm
Sure.
Edward.
My name's Emiliano, like
Say it
Emiliano
again.
Zapata. You know who Emiliano Zapata is? A famous Mexican revolutionary. That's who I was named after.
Okay, really
Yes.
cool.
Hey,
So
Edward. I'm assuming Edward is your name, right?
yeah,
So
yeah. Edward is my name. But Emily. So what can I call you?
I guess you
Emiliano?
could call me civil commentary. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
No,
I am kind of concerned with
but I mean
adoption.
now, but I mean now. Your first name is Emiliano, or
Emiliano, if you can say it like that, or Emiliano.
ah, Emiliano. Okay,
Yeah, no, it's okay.
that's
And
it.
I
Oh,
saw that you're trying
I
to work on
okay.
your Spanish. So you know what? That's a good first step right there, trying to pronounce that correctly.
Yeah, no hablo. Oh, I'm doing French at the moment, but
Oh,
no hablo. How do you say
tanto
a
en
lot of?
español.
No hablo a lot of Spanish.
Está bien. Vamos a hablar en inglés hoy, okay?
Okay,
So we'll
yeah,
go ahead and
great.
continue in English because I don't
Okay,
speak German or French. But go ahead and get
great.
your
Hey,
coffee, man. I want you to
I'll
be
do it.
ready.
Yep, I'll be right back.
All right, let's go ahead and see how we got. Okay, now I know how to do this. There we go. All right, let's see if it's going to go ahead and record better. I'm going to have to do some editing to clip some of this extra outtakes, I guess. It's all good. And it's good to finally talk to people online. I guess one of the things I'm really trying to do is to model having conversations because it's really easy to converse with people online, the ambiguity of the internet and just raging on somebody because they don't, believe the same things you believe in. And I just always find it a lot easier to have those conversations with someone in person, like Edward today.
Right,
So,
we like to rage on each other.
no,
I've learned that in the last 10 years.
oh, for sure. I mean, I've had a diversity of friends. I've lived around all over the United States, New Mexico, California, and Texas. So I've gotten used to everybody and arguing with so
Yeah,
many different kinds of people and, having family members that are conservatives and more people leaning toward
yeah.
the limousine liberal route. So it's just been pretty
Limousine
diverse
liberal,
for
it's a
me.
nice one.
Yeah, I mean, like
Yeah,
your
yeah,
Kamala Harris kind of supporters.
yeah. That was one thing that surprised me a lot. I mean, I've been in Germany since 1993, and then got
Mhm.
on Facebook in 2013, and kind of got reacquainted or a lot closer to my family and friends. And I just assumed that, like, all of my family and friends were somewhat like Joe Rogan, where they just talk with everybody, and you disagree, and yeah, it's either at a comedy level, or you disagree and you talk about things and you find out where you don't agree, and have conversations. But that just wasn't the case in
No,
2013. And
yeah,
so I've been just it's just curious, or your curiosity,
I
why I'm
agree.
exploring this, because it's dysfunctional when any
No,
group can't talk.
I think politics and religion has always been on the fringe, so you never know until you have that conversation. It's usually black or white. There's not any
Yeah,
in betweens when it comes to those two topics, but anything else, everyone can have a morbid sense of humor and get, a kick out of
yeah,
it. So, but when it comes to politics, I think it's always been that way. Because I remember when I was younger, I would see my father converse with my uncle, who were both at the opposite ends of the political spectrum. I
yeah.
would consider my father more like a blue dog Democrat, more conservative, and my
Mm.
uncle's more on the right. And the conversations back in the day, my dad was curious because they respect each other. He's like, "Oh, who'd you vote for?" And my uncle's like, "None of your damn business." It's like, whoa, where did that come from? So it was
Yeah, yeah,
more
that's what we
like,
learned. Yeah, that's
you
right.
didn't discuss politics that much in the past. And I grew up in the 80s and in the 90s. So I got to see a little bit of that tail end of like keeping that to yourself. You know what? You go to the voting booth, it's, you're concealed. So that
Yeah.
mentality carried out. And now that the internet's out, people are more open about my
Yeah,
politics.
okay.
Yeah, same uncle. Oh man, he's talking about how much he loves Trump and all that, and all those right-wing talking points get spouted out there. I was like, well, you weren't very opinionated before, but now you just need to let everyone know what you're thinking. And
Yeah.
it's always through memes. not having those conversations. So I've always, and I
Mm,
wanted to converse with him. I'm like, I can't be direct because I do respect him and I do admire his, his past. He's a very respectable person, but his politics,
yeah.
I don't respect. So I always attack his memes and I always provide facts when I, attack those memes
Mm,
because it's just like, why can't you come out with your own words? Because that would make you do some research to make sure that what you're putting up there, you put more thought into it. But,
mm.
but I think the
Yeah, yeah,
internet
yeah. It's a
capitalizes
fasc.
on outrage too. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of that as well. Yeah, yeah. It's. I mean, it's that topic that I'm interested in. Is yeah. I mean, just take that point. What you just said. I mean, back in the '70s, that's how I grew up as well. You just learned what you didn't talk about, what you could joke about, but couldn't be serious in criticism about. And
Hmm.
and you just learn those kind of nuances as you grow up. But it's like, okay, if you think about it, okay, voting is like deciding, um, what kind of laws you want to make other people live by. So if you're in my society or if you're in my group or anything, and we're voting on how we want to, um, have our laws to control our behavior, well, I really want to know what you think and what you're voting on. That's
Yeah,
very important to me because I don't want you to vote for something that's going to make my daughter be a second class citizen, you know? I mean,
no,
because so I really want to know what you're voting on, and I really want you to express your political views, and I want you to make sense. And if you don't, then I'm going to use my free speech to make fun of you or ridicule you or something like that. I mean, that's
yeah.
how
I
it
mean,
goes.
that's when
Where
rhetoric is pretty important. And then the thing is, what you're mentioning right there, that's another diversity of tactics right there. That might work. And that's why I feel like, everyone should have their say because what you think might work might not be very effective, but somebody else's means of trying to
yeah,
communicate might get what you want. So there's
yeah,
not
yeah,
a
but
100% way to do it, but go
yeah,
ahead. I'm sorry.
but that's I think you have to pick apart also what you mean by what works because that's one um, comment that I get. People ask me, okay, so in the past 5, 6 years, I was writing this book on the side, that kind of thing. So doing somewhat regular research, engaging people on Facebook in these conversations on ethical views, political views, religious views, how they treat other people, and why, and that kind of thing. And one thing that they often say is, "Well, do you ever convince anybody with that?" And the answer is hardly never.
Well, yeah, I agree. When you want to have that conversation with that particular individual, the likelihood of you changing that individual's mind is going to be probably the hardest thing to do. One of my buddies that, I had that kind of conversation like what we're talking about right now. I was like, yeah, here I am trying to address this one dude that's putting his memes up there. And I'm like trying to say, hey, this is why you're wrong. It's not the fact that it's my opinion or your opinion. You're empirically wrong. But he goes, yeah, but it starts that conversation. So now that we're doing this conversation, conversing online, other people get to see that. And that's what
Mhm.
you really want to do. Use them as a platform or use that conversation. You're in an arena, you're a
Mhm.
gladiatorial arena and your
Mhm.
ideas are battling.
Mhm.
Maybe you're not going to convince them, but it's going to be very apparent that they don't know how to articulate their case. And other people will see that as a sign of weakness and they'll make their decisions. And the likelihood of people that say, hey, I do like that guy, but man, he couldn't even back up what he says. And that will affect other people's opinions. Probably not as much as we'd want,
Yeah,
but if we decide to say nothing, nothing gets changed.
yeah, yeah,
So that's the reason I do what I do. And I feel like talking to you might help create the momentum of more people making videos instead of just doing the keyboard warrior route, which is
yeah.
good. But like you said, I mean, those policies affect everybody. So why shouldn't we have those conversations? And when
Yeah.
people say illegals don't pay taxes and don't realize that they pay sales tax that gets a big percentage of the state revenue, I'm like, you're empirically
Mm.
wrong. It's not like I have a dog in the fight, but you're wrong. So
Yeah,
by
yeah,
saying that, you're not correct. It's not my opinion.
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
that you're wrong. So
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I just think there's a lot more going on. I mean, I hear what you say with logical argument. You can say that you can. point a fact out to somebody and it can be a generally accepted fact, but there's a lot more going on in terms of how people decide how to behave, what to do.
Hmm.
And one analysis of that is, if you look at the debate between Hillary and Trump,
Hmm.
and at one point Hillary said, you said something, I forgot what it was,
Hmm.
and then Trump leaned into the microphone and said, "No, I didn't."
Yeah.
And the thing is you can see it on YouTube. You can see that he said it,
Yeah.
but he said, "No, I didn't." And what that is simply a signal of who's with me on this.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what's real
Yeah.
anymore. Just who's on my team. And then it doesn't matter. And the thing is, you can see this with like flat Earth.
Hmm.
You know, that's ridiculous. I mean, if you're a flat earther, you're unemployable. You're
Yeah.
dangerously unemployable,
Yeah.
and provably so, right? But flat
Yeah.
earther just means, um, I'm on the team. It's kind of like being a Mormon. It's like, uh, you know,
Yeah. No,
we're
I hear what you say.
and but the thing is like if you read books like Harari, you realize that's what makes humans powerful. Is just get in a group and believe the same thing. And it doesn't matter whatsoever if that thing is true or not. In fact, the less true it is, the more emotional it is. You
Hmm.
know, if you have, and that's why religions are very powerful, because you have these fantasies of being in heaven, or attaining riches, or any all kinds of cults and patriotism. We're the greatest country, the biggest country, the strongest country. you know that doesn't have to be true at all,
No,
but it
yeah, people
it
are going
it,
to
it
use
makes
something
the
to
group.
justify themselves, and
Yeah.
then especially if you're not informed, you can always rely on religion because you could rely on faith rather than books. No one's going to question you when you have your faith and your beliefs, but people are going to
Hmm.
question you when you start talking about policy and what you uh,
Right.
believe when you support a certain candidate. So it's an
Yeah.
insecurity for a lot of people. That's probably why they don't talk a lot about politics. And I have no shame and I don't mind admitting when I'm
Yeah.
wrong, because I think in our culture, we haven't embraced like being wrong as a process of learning, as
Hmm.
long as you don't keep making the same mistakes. And in my opinion, about the 2016 election between Trump and Hillary, from what most Trump supporters are pretty much transparent that Trump is a liar. They agree that he's not the cleanest politician, but he was
Hmm.
somebody that could mix up the system and get stuff done. That was their justification. It wasn't like they had the moral high ground. They didn't justify that he was a decent dude. They knew he had multiple wives. They knew he
Hmm.
was a liar and he had like a bad reputation, but they felt like he would be the wrench in the gears of corruption, which now we could look back in hindsight and just see that he did the same thing all the other presidents did with tax cuts and
Well,
just
he
empowered them.
said, I don't know if you remember that wonderful meme that he had in the Republican debates very early.
Yeah.
When do you remember when they were all on the stage, and there's like nine of them now, and they're all at their podium, and then the moderator said, "Mr. Trump, we all know that you donate to the Democrats,
Hmm.
and there's like, oh, and he said, could you please explain that?" And he
Yeah.
said, "Well, of course, I donate to the Democrats. I donate to all politicians. And you know why? So that they do what I want. In
Exactly.
fact, I think I've given money to everybody standing on the stage."
That's probably 100% true.
They're
And
holding
he
their.
spoke truth to power at that point. And that got a
Yeah.
lot of supporters to be like, we're backing this dude. I mean, even though
Yeah.
he admitted that he was super corrupt, that gained their trust, because I think so many people in our country,
He
and
just
especially
says it. Yeah.
southern states, there's a lot of economic suffering. There's a lot of poverty in
Yeah.
this country that shouldn't be existing. I mean, people
Mm.
not being able to afford going to the doctor, avoid going to the doctor, and just like so much college debt. And then when
Mm.
you have so many desperate people, they're going to make desperate decisions. And I think Trump was like a
Mm.
big
That's a good
FU
one.
to
Yeah.
the establishment, and that's why they
Mm.
voted for him, because that complements like
Definitely. Yeah.
the mentality of somebody that's going to go on a mass shooting rampage.
Mm.
They don't care. And they went to the point where they don't care even about themselves, because
Mm.
they've been a victim of our systematic corruption in this country. So when all these people are talking about racism or whatever cultural war topics, I just
Mm,
feel like that's just a symptom to the systematic issues that we have in this country. So if
mm,
you help us with the economy, you're going to have less of that. People are going to value themselves more, and they're probably
mm,
not going to want to take their own life and other people's lives. But I think it's just a symptom of having a bad economy and politicians not representing the people. Uh, you always hear them referencing the employment record and then the GDP. And I was like, that's not helping our infrastructure. That's not helping maintain fresh
mm.
water that you see southern states that are getting contaminated with pipes that are made out of lead. So, when I see a Trump supporter, I do see them as another American. That's a brother, that's a sister. I understand that we're going to think differently, but I have
Mm,
to connect with them on a personal level. For one, I've lived amongst them, I'm related to them. So it's easy for me to do that.
right.
But you have limousine liberals that just want to go ahead and sweep all their concerns under the rug and disparage
Mm,
them. But am I saying they're right? No, of course not. So they both need to be held accountable.
yeah.
And I think more people are starting to do that now that we have
Mm,
online conversations. People are doing this
yeah.
more. And I think
Yeah.
that's what we need. And that's why you have a lot of censorship now with YouTube and with Joe Rogan, because normal people are having those conversations. And Joe Rogan,
Yeah.
he was the one that kind of initiated that. And there's a lot of
Mm,
nobodies like me doing what I'm doing right now. And I think
yeah.
that's powerful. I think if more
It's
people
nice.
see that, they'll unite.
Yeah. I think you and I were talking about the Jimmy Dore
Mhm.
Boogaloo Boy.
Yeah.
That was when I saw that I thought, oh, this is the beginning of something really good because you're getting people talking and they're realizing that they have a lot in common
No, I
and
agree.
neither of the parties are representing them.
No, no,
And
I agree.
I think the both of the parties are very scared of that,
No,
and
they
they'll both shut that down.
yeah, it'll challenge the status quo, empowering regular
Yeah,
people.
but I think I've developed a slightly different approach than yours of seeing people like as my brothers and that kind of thing. And I think it comes a little. I mean, it's my. Um, I think it was always my approach to things, just being critical.
Mhm,
And but I see it also in the German culture here that it's just more default is to be critical of people, and that is to simply just assume that people are bullshitting or
mhm.
lying or or even if they don't know that they're doing it, or that there's just don't generally be critical of people and just don't trust them.
We're
And
considerably a newer country than Germany. You guys had a lot more established time to make mistakes with your politics and all that and develop a culture, be more critical. I think we're more
yeah,
ideologues over here in this side of the
yeah,
planet.
yeah. I mean, there's a good book on the Germans called The German Genius, and it's basically talking about if you want to look if you want to learn about Germany. I mean, of course, a lot of Germany and German history, important histories, during the Hitler years and that kind of thing. But that was that's a small part of German history, and
Oh yeah.
the book looks at the scientific and cultural progress before then. But um, yeah, it is kind of a trait here, but it's basically just there's not this superficial friendliness. Like even on the street here, um, rare that I would even say hello to a stranger.
Mhm.
We just leave each other in our thoughts. That's more polite than to break in and say, "Hello, how are you doing? How is it great?" And saying that to every person. Where in the States, you and I've identified it as something that comes from Dale Carnegie.
Mhm.
That's this book, Dale Carnegie, is a book that kind of turns everybody into a salesman.
Mhm.
And that's reflected also in another, I think, really good book on the States is Fantasyland by Anderson, I think his name is,
Yeah.
where there's just in the American culture, there's a lot of fantasy. And
I
he
agree.
and
To a
he
certain,
argues that it's good. There's a lot of good to it.
there's pros
I
and
mean,
cons to
I mean, I
everything.
mean, I mean, we the Americans had a fantasy in the '60s to put a man on the moon, and then did it.
Mhm.
But you have to have the fantasy first. You know,
Exactly.
I mean, and it, it brings people together, and then you do big things. And I mean, one thing that I really like about America are the tech companies. They're fantastic. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, in terms of tech, I think there's a lot of things that Apple does and Amazon does that are horrible, socially, that kind of thing. But their technology is really fantastic, and that comes from just having people um, imagining things that could someday be, and then actually create them. And that's a characteristic of America that I really like. But I think what America doesn't have and is starting to show is this feedback of criticism that I see here, where like even if you go into a restaurant, the customer is not king here. I mean, if the waitress is having a bad day, then she'll let it out on you. It's no problem. She's a human, you know,
Yeah.
and you don't complain that she's rude to the management or something. It's just that she's a human, and if you're having a bad day, then you might exchange a couple, barbs or something, and that's just it's just okay. Whereas in the States, that's you could get fired for that.
No, I have a
You know?
story that complements that. I
Yeah,
mean, me being
I
more
bet.
toward the left, I can
Mm.
understand, some people have a bad day, but my more conservative family members, they would get so upset if their French fries were cold or if their steak wasn't made, and they would make a big stink. It's like, I paid
Yeah,
good money for this. I work hard for this money. I want my food to be dealt the right way. And I've seen them throw fits
okay.
in restaurants. And we're just like, whoa. And so,
Yeah,
yeah, I agree. That's
yeah. Following the example of Jesus, huh? I mean,
yeah, exactly. But I have a question. And since I mean, I had one German friend, and y'all
mm.
guys are not like you don't embrace patriotism as much, do y'all, in Germany?
No, but very no. And in fact, waving the German flag was kind of a there was really um, no reason to put up a German flag. It would just be kind of odd up until 2006 when
Mm.
the Weltmeisterschaft, the World Soccer Championships, were
That's
here.
what he would say, just
And
during
yeah,
sports.
and then all of a sudden, people were putting like German flags on their cars, and then it was kind of a warm feeling. It's like, okay, none of the people alive today had anything to do with the war, and let's get over it.
Mhm.
And let's root for our team and be able to wave a flag. So that kind of came back and stuff like that. But I just have to think of Yuval Harari's books, *Sapiens* and stuff. It's like, look, patriotism. I mean, nations are made up anyway.
Mhm.
Nations are a great idea. Like he says, they're one of the best ideas humans ever thought of
Mhm.
because they help people care for other people who they don't even know or fight for people who they don't even know. Perfect.
Mhm.
But Harari's point is that then why not just extend it to the human race? I mean, if it's such a great idea, why not just include everybody?
For
Why
sure.
exclude people?
Yeah.
It's a it's a great argument.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. And I just remember my friend saying, "Yeah, the last time we got really patriot and things didn't work out so well, patriotic."
Yeah,
So I was like,
yeah.
"Okay." Well, I just thought that was really interesting because it was the 4th of July, and we were both taking classes abroad in Mexico. So I was talking to him
Mm,
about that. I was like, "Yeah, it's 4th of July.
mm.
When's y'all's holiday? When you get all patriotic?" He goes, "Oh yeah, we don't do that." I was
Exactly.
like,
Yeah, we
I
don't
was
do that.
like, that's how. But he was super cool,
Yeah.
and like you said, he wasn't really friendly from the beginning, but he was like a really close friend once we had those conversations. And you know what? When we had our last time together, he was a little sad and I was sad. So it was a really meaningful relationship. And I learned a lot from him and just found German culture very interesting because one of the things when we both went to Mexico and we studied together, he walked into a Walmart and he was just like looking around. He's like, Dios mío, in a German accent. He goes, man, look at all the stuff they have in here. Because I don't know, in Germany, do you have huge warehouse grocery stores like we do in the States, or it's not really popular down there?
No, it's more um regulated and just like in fact all stores are closed on Sundays.
Yeah, that's You
You
know
know, that
that.
wouldn't go well in the
I
States.
know it's like they
You
don't worship the Lord's book; they
know,
worship money here. So
yeah,
a lot of
exactly.
people haven't made that connection yet.
That may be the Lord's book. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's well, if I could like generalize it, it's I mean, there's just I just, I've been here since 93, and I've just seen more and more common sense be put into law, basically.
yeah.
Like there are laws for, that advertisers can't use the bandwagon fallacy in advertisements that target children under 12. Which is
Mhm.
a great idea. You can't have a group of kids saying, we all love, we're all really happy because we have this product,
Mm,
because children just aren't old enough to deal with that yet. And just really good ideas that shows that, somebody who's making these laws cares
yeah, for
about a good
sure.
society. Or like, we have state TV here, and that's not an idea that would go over well in the
Mm.
States. And we if you have a TV, you have to pay extra taxes, and it goes to these programs. Well, my kids, they're now 20 and 18, so they're grown up now, but they were able to watch children's shows that were, scientific, educational, and non-entertainment, like Bill Nye the Science Guy, who's always
Mhm.
hopping around and that kind of stuff, trying to keep people's attention, but science shows that are
Built for
good
kids
with no advertisements, none.
because there's not a profit incentive because it's
Right,
already government
right.
funded. And that makes
Yeah,
sense. When
yeah,
you
right.
have like a profit incentive, you're going to have a lot of things that were meant for good that gets
Yeah,
distorted and
yeah,
manipulated to make more money. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I
And
definitely see some
and
value in that.
and and this comes back to, like, what happened when I got on Facebook in 2013 is, I was really happy with all these programs, plus, you know um healthcare that works quite well here, and everybody has it. It's, basically free, paid by taxes. Universities are free here. Everybody can go if they can show that they're um smart enough in that topic to go,
Hmm.
you know um, and voicing these views on Facebook in 2013 and on, when I was doing that, I mean, my family just called me a socialist and said they didn't want to have anything to do with me anymore,
Yeah, I
because
mean,
I'm advocating science shows for children that don't have advertisements.
it's like, can you define socialism? Because that's one area where they struggle. I mean, to define the words they're utilizing, and they just want English only, and
Yeah,
they haven't mastered that language yet.
yeah,
So just
and
like you're
what? Yeah.
tossing words out there, and you don't
Well,
know what they
yeah,
mean.
and the answer is no, they can't, and they're gone.
Yeah.
That's and the thing is that the reason I survived all that is because I don't have I don't have any economic ties with the States, and I'm not dependent on my family in any way, so I could say anything. I was free to say anything that I wanted,
Hmm.
and C, or three, or whatever. I want to be around honest people.
For
you
sure.
know and so, if you can't have a conversation and define your terms, um then you're not very interesting. And B, I mean, if if you can't define your terms, then by definition you don't know what you're talking about.
They probably can, but they use religion to define themselves, and that's where it
Yeah,
gets
but
problematic.
yeah, but the thing is, that's fine. I mean, I'm religious myself. I just admit that it's bullshit,
Yeah.
and it's bullshit for me to feel good.
You're
And
good at separating your spirituality, your religion from your politics. And I
well,
think that's one thing that we should get away from in the States. We just like to marry those two.
yeah.
And that's a big mistake because a lot of people have different interpretations. It's like when they say we want the 10 Commandments to be at a court building, and they don't realize the legislation that's involved in that would give the rights for the Muslim community to put their religious relics at the courthouse.
Well,
Because
yeah, but not only that, what they want is they want laws. What they're saying is that they want laws that were created before any concept of human rights.
yeah,
And I don't.
no, I mean,
I want laws that are based pretty much on a really excellent document, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which
Mhm.
Eleanor Roosevelt had a lot to do with. She was wonderful in that in the drafting of it. It was
Yeah.
the 1948, and if you read that text, it's the most compassionate text.
Mhm.
It beats anything you read in the Gospels.
Yeah. Well,
I
it's
mean, it's
probably
just saying
inspired by
it's
that
just saying
spirituality too.
feed people, give them an apartment, help
Mhm.
people thrive in your society, help people contribute to your society, and let people wear anything they want on their bodies. Don't make
Yeah.
them wear a head covering. Don't do that. Just if somebody wants to change their religion, let them do that, and don't be violent with them
Yeah.
if they do. Those are all just it's just common sense. It's just basically a text on how to not be an asshole.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I agree. The
but
asshole
but
amendment right there.
yeah.
Um,
But I mean, but the thing is that you get people in these conversations and they'll just describe that as that's just socialism, it's communism, and that's what we fight.
Yeah, I haven't had many right wingers that went to that extent. I think you had an extreme example that's personal, and that stinks, man. But I mean, most of the conversations I had with some right wingers, they're pretty transparent about like their politics. They just feel that's the better route than going, and
Mm,
they don't know the definition of socialism and communism. Because I just recently saw on my Facebook, one of my buddies, he posted, you know what? We shouldn't just value people getting a degree. We should make sure people go to vocation school too. And I was like, well, there was a candidate that advocated for that, and you probably didn't vote for him. So
you
they,
mean Bernie?
yeah,
Bernie
he
or
was he was for
yeah,
vocation schools. And I just
yeah.
think one of the things that hurt Americans, we want the Thanos snap approach. And sure, I mean, a lot of
What's
politicians,
that? Daniel Snap?
the Thanos, the Marvel comics, Thanos
Ah,
snapped his
okay, yeah,
fingers
yeah.
and then everyone just went
Oh, okay,
away.
yeah, yeah.
So, people like Bernie and the squad and, everyone that a lot of people supported wholeheartedly, they wanted to see radical change. It's just not going to be them. I blame a lot of that on the people. Like you just gave me some examples of how crazy Americans can be. And you really can't have that much change if you don't have a lot of that support to help you
Mm,
change. Because I think a lot of people, like on the Jimmy Dore side, they don't realize most Americans don't want Medicare for all, unfortunately. They
mm,
want the public option. So if you're a politician that has ran on Medicare for all, you're going to have to grease the wheels and try to get more people support that legislation
mm,
so it could eventually happen. But when you have people that are going to be empowered to just do the Joe Rogan stuff now, because if AOC was more aggressive, I think she's not as popular as Joe Rogan. The media would smear her, everyone would go after her, and there goes our progressive
mm,
momentum right there. So I could be wrong, but just based on what I see and patterns that I see, that's
mm,
how I, support politicians. Because here's Joe Rogan. Everyone loves him, but he's losing a lot of money for Spotify. A lot of people are saying, well, Joe Rogan beat Spotify. Yeah, he probably is going to stay there because they invested a lot of money, but they've lost a lot of money of all these celebrity elitists pulling out, and CNN's just slandering them. So you could just imagine what would happen to politicians that are considered progressive that would be more divisive toward the establishment. They need more support to
mm,
face the powerful endless money supply that a lot of these corporations have on our politics. So I just
mm.
think we need to be more consistent and more strategic, because that's another thing with Jimmy Dore, because he was like, I'm sorry to get off topic, but I just want to hear your
No,
side.
that's right on topic.
Yeah, because Jimmy Dore was all about we need to be aggressive. And I'm like, okay, well, where was that aggression when you had Tulsi Gabbard when she did a 180 with Medicare for all? He's not consistent with his rhetoric. And that's what
Mm,
made me just lose, my confidence with him. Because I used to watch him all the time. I used to
mm,
agree with him. And I like that strategic approach of just like being direct and holding people accountable,
yeah,
which he didn't with Tulsi Gabbard. So I'm
yeah.
just like, come on, man, where's the consistency there, dude? So you're just
Mm,
looking to just crap on everyone that will probably be an ally if we're consistently, supporting them.
mm,
I mean, you can't expect like what she just turned 30. I mean, if I went to Congress, I would probably be pressured and not make the right choices all the time too. So I mean,
mm,
the squad was able to push something into the legislation in Congress, but who destroyed that? The moderates, the cinema and mansion. So a lot of people just want to go ahead and look at the squad and put all the weight of all their expectations and their
Mm.
dreams, but it's on us too. We have to carry that load. And if we're
Yeah.
not consistently supporting our politicians that are, giving us something of an effort, I mean, how are
Mm.
we going to see progress? We have to work
Yeah.
as a collective, and
Yeah.
that's why I like talking.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say that I know the difference between Medicare for all and the public option. I mean, that would be a nice thing to come up in some conversation that I watch, but it doesn't. I mean, like you say,
Mm-mm.
the Dore show, it's just kind of a chant now,
Well, another
Medicare
good
for all,
point.
Medicare for all. But I mean, what is the difference? I mean, a public option it means that
I'll go ahead
you
and explain. Well, the
explain.
Medicare for all is going to be, and it was even a tier system with
Mhm,
Bernie Sanders. They were going to give a range of people access to
mhm,
government health care because
mhm,
we would overload our healthcare system, and we have a bigger population than Europeans do in their countries.
mhm,
And a good point that you made, it was there was like a program for the youth to get them in shape. We have
mhm,
a lot of unhealthy people here in the United States. So if we were to give them all free healthcare, it would probably do some damage to our infrastructure in healthcare. So the reason I kind of align more with the public option is the choice to get private insurance or the public
mhm,
option, which is the government. But the criticism for that is a lot of government programs in the United States are not really well funded, which is a legitimate criticism. But maybe if we had programs that we invested to get people healthier,
mhm,
and then with the public option, and then gradually go to Medicare for all, that would be a little bit more relief on our infrastructure via healthcare.
mhm,
Because I mean, that's a big, if you check the obesity rate for kids in the United States, it's pretty sad.
mhm.
And, people are just not active because I feel like the family dynamic is getting destroyed because of our poor economy. I mean, people are working all the time. They're not able to be doing their job as a parent, having those
Right.
Sundays off like y'all. I mean,
Mhm,
people are working on the weekends, multiple part-time jobs. We have a gig
mhm,
economy. So the poorest of the poor, they're not being able to do their job as parents, and their kids are bad. Their behavior gets worse, their
mhm.
studies get worse. So it's
Definitely,
a
yeah.
systemic issue. And
Mhm. That makes
unfortunately,
sense,
the
yeah.
cheapest food is the most unhealthiest food.
Mhm. Definitely,
So
yeah.
yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know if
yeah,
there's an easy answer.
yeah, and one thing that I read about on food a lot in the difference between America and Europe is that there just aren't as many regulations in the States. So companies can put all kinds of stuff in. And there was even a warning for people in France when they go to the States, don't eat raw steaks. Because in France you can eat raw steak and they like to eat raw steaks. Whatever. I
They
don't.
prepare them like that in Japan too.
Yeah. But the thing is that you have chemicals in the States that aren't allowed in France, and that if you eat them, you can get quite sick.
Yeah.
And that just gets passed. I mean, the thing is, try to be critical of that. Like, try to make a movie like Super Size Me, like
Yeah.
2004, about the guy who ate big McDonald's for
Yeah.
a month and got very ill, and then throughout the movie, it's a documentary. It's kind of made
No,
up
I
there,
know what you're
but
talking
he
about.
did try to contact McDonald's, and they just won't talk. They just won't talk, and that's the problem. Nobody is holding them accountable for ruining people's health for profits.
Well, the thing is, a lot of poor people know they eat unhealthy. They have food deserts. Uh, the
Food
where I
deserts.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have a shopping. I mean, they don't have a grocery store that sells vegetables. You'll have a Dollar General in
God.
those neighborhoods. You'll have a Dollar Tree in those neighborhoods that have those microwavable meals, and you'll have gas
Well, they
stations.
and they don't have vegetables or what?
No,
Food
they don't have
deserts.
vegetables. Go look at Dollar General and see what they sell. You're going to see a food desert would be considered like a
Food
place where there's
desert.
no grocery stores with vegetables and actually healthy food. And they have like
I've learned
banking.
another term.
Yeah, I mean,
Wonderful.
that's how bad it is in some areas, especially if you work around a Title I school. You can see that little area where all the communities are apartment building. It's a renter economy
What
there.
does Title One mean? I don't
When
know.
over 80% of your students are considered qualified for free or reduced lunch.
Oh, okay. So Title One is not the best, really. Or okay, because here it's the opposite. There's a thing called
Mm,
HOTS 4, and then if you're at 4, then you're quite poor. Okay.
yeah, so
So
it
Title
just,
One. Okay, got it.
yeah, you're going to see more unhealthy demographic around that area because their source of food is not going to be the healthiest. And I mean,
That's
yeah.
fantastic. I mean, it's not fantastic, but these I mean, that's just something that I keep learning. And one reason why I wanted to get in touch with you because ironically,
Mhm.
um, this book that I was writing starting in 2016 after Trump got elected, it was called or it was going to be called or the running title was Raising the Intellectual and Ethical Bar of the United States. And a roommate friend of mine, an American friend of mine, longtime friend, who's an author now, and I were going to write it. So we,
Mhm.
did this research on Twitter and Facebook and engaged people in conversation. And then every month we met like this,
Mhm.
and talked about the conversations that we had and how people argue and various strategies and stuff like that. And we just got more and more critical. And the thing was, at some point, he couldn't talk about various things in his family. It turned out that his own children were in a school where they were using the Bible in
Mhm.
history and biology classes. One of
Mm.
these Christian schools, which he's totally against. And then it was because his wife is a religious, um, um,
She
you
wants
know,
that, to be a part of their children's life.
well, let's just say this very manipulative American shallow religion, and
Mm.
and and so I just, like I was engaging other people in conversation, engaged him in conversation, and kept asking them about it. And at some point, he said, "Look, I can't talk to you anymore about this. I can't sleep. I'm having fights with my family. I
Mm.
have to discontinue the book."
Wow.
And it's the book on solving this problem,
Oh man.
and so I lost any contact that I had to, the feet on the ground in the States. So that's one reason why, I just, all these small things like Title One and that kind of stuff, I would like to know about, or food deserts and that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
because
it's
it's so different here, and not only in Germany, but in every country here, they solve things basically differently. It's much more different from country to country than in the States from state to
yeah, our
state. So,
peer nations are superior in taking care of their own citizens, in my
mhm,
personal opinion. I mean, a lot of people like to claim how great the economy here is in Texas, and they always say, "Don't California my Texas." I'm like, well, of all the
mhm,
states you're referencing, California is by far not the poorest state in our country, but they find like a logical argument because there's some bad things they've seen on TV, and they don't
mhm,
want that to happen to our Texas. I was like, how about Mississippi? How about West Virginia? How about Louisiana? There's so many other states you can compare us to not
mhm,
make us into, which are probably majority ran by Republicans. So
mhm.
it's just like empirically being
Yeah.
wrong is something. I have a little redneck in me, so I went to a rural high school, and so
Mhm,
I have no problem talking to people that are probably in that same demographic. I
mhm,
was like, whatever, man, you're full of crap too. So, and then,
mhm,
I'm pretty, well respected amongst peers and all that. So they know I'm genuine. And,
mhm.
so I got that going for me. Unfortunately, fortunately, I don't have anybody that's, some of those crazy, man, that stinks. If you had your own wife, just like, dogging you for, I don't know, for his endeavors of making a book.
Uh, yeah, and I mean there was just so much dysfunction. I mean, his wife was going to this religious church, so he went with his family to this religious church once a month, but then on the other days he went to another church, and then he was also part of something called the Atheist Club.
Well,
And
for
I
the
said,
record,
"Oh,
I'm religious. I'm a Catholic. But
me
one of the
too."
things, yeah, and
Me
one of
too.
the things that I see a lot of fellow leftists, they always dog religion. I'm like, well, also remember all the people that you look up to use religion too, like MLK, he was a pastor. I mean, Malcolm X, they were all very religious, and they had the ability to use religion against all these other people that claim the moral high ground with
Mm,
religion. So
mm,
that's what I use my religion when I have takes with people that are trying to make it look like they have the moral high ground. Like,
mm.
no, you don't, dude. Did you read the
Yeah,
Bible?
yeah,
But yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of dysfunction in religion, and in this in this atheist group, they I asked what they talked about, and he said, "Oh, we talk about a lot about scientific things, um, and or we just get together and we discuss sometimes science, or we just get together and play volleyball and that kind of stuff. And so you discuss science and play volleyball. Why do you call yourselves atheists then? And he said, oh, that's just so that none of the religious crazies come.
Oh my goodness.
It was just a way to get away from the craziness of religion,
Hmm.
basically. And you just have to call yourself atheist, and then they won't come.
Yeah. Well, that does make
It's
sense.
so dysfunctional, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and with religion, like you say, it's very hard to argue against, because it's made up, and so what I've always felt kind of religious, so but a really great way to argue against religious people is to just say that you believe exactly what they do, but you admit it's bullshit.
Yeah. I mean,
And
some
and
people
and
prove
and
that all
that's
the time on a daily basis by being hypocrites. And I'm
yeah,
like, well, there, I rest my case. Your
yeah,
behavior justifies what I just
yeah.
said. So,
Yeah, but I just think that that's I mean, you have to get behind this, and I think Trump did something in that sense, that when he's kind of a clown, kind of a there was a good German book on him called Trump with an exclamation mark,
mhm.
George Cieslin, Georg Cieslin, and he basically, his argument was that Trump was the first pop culture uh, president, where um, he was voted for because he was funny, because, like you say, he's just a wrecking ball type person. Um, whether or not he's corrupt, it doesn't matter. So it's like just turning everything on its head. And what I'm seeing internationally, I mean, that in the Ukraine, somebody was elected who was playing a president in a TV
In a
series.
reality TV show.
Yeah,
Oh my
and he's a
gosh.
comedian. He's a comedian. And the thing is look at Jimmy Dore as a comedian.
Mhm.
Joe Rogan is a comedian, and they're the people who are doing some of the best journalism now. Comedians, and I've
Cool.
just found, I've been through my research. I think I have 5 bans on Facebook, and 2 on Twitter, and 1 on Quora, and a deleted comment on LinkedIn. Just having these, finding the limit of what you can
So
of
you
free
intentionally
of free
look for
speech.
the terms of agreement limitations, I assume.
Oh, well, I'm just no, I just have
People would report
conversations with
you.
people.
Oh, they would
Yeah, yeah,
probably.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. I mean, one comment that I got banned for 30 days on Facebook for was, it was in a conversation on U.S. healthcare, and my argument was, well, it's not going to happen because Americans are too stupid, greedy, selfish, unorganized to do it. Otherwise, it would have happened.
mhm.
30-day ban for hate speech.
Really? I
Yeah.
mean, if you look at polls, most Americans want to negotiate drug prices. So, I mean, you could probably find facts that, disagree with what you said, but it's our politicians that are not, advocating for the desires of Americans. I mean, when you look at the polls of policy during the
Mm,
Democratic primary, Medicare
mm,
for all was actually polling pretty high, other than the I think at one time it did poll higher than the public option. But when you look at
mm,
independents and Republicans and conservatives, whatever, the polling gets switched more toward the public option. So I think most of the Americans are probably going to agree with what you say, but at the same time, it's the people in power. They just have so much power due to buying off politicians that it's hard to get what most Americans want. They are really good at making us fight with each other. So if we focus on what we agree on,
mm,
basis based on the polling numbers on policy, we probably could see something change for the better. But I think the media, the healthcare industry, big pharma, and then the politicians are just really good at just not allowing us to focus on what we agree on.
mm,
So that's the thing that we have to fight. And every time we see this outrage, because that's what the algorithm does, it encourages outrage. If you
mm,
look at the right wing talking points, you're just going to have more examples of how crazy people on the left are, and vice versa. And
mm,
then me being amongst people that are on the right would give me the the last shirt they have on their back, so I'm like,
Mm,
I've never viewed people like that are on the right, because I personally know them. So I would go
mm,
out of my way to say, you know what, you just proved that people could have a civil conversation. I just had a Twitter argument with some girl that's following some dude that I'm trying to have a conversation with, but
mm,
I'm not really looking for him because I don't think he'll ever will. But the people that follow him, I'm trying to get clout, internet
okay.
clout. So and I'm like, you know what? We just ranted at each other. And did I ever say anything disrespectful to you? And she's like, yeah, she didn't answer it, but I was like, see, I just proved my point. We had a respectable dialogue. I wish the person that you were following was like you. So
Mm,
I'm gonna do
mm,
those little, wax on, wax off, those small moments that build a
yeah,
foundation. We can't just do the crane kick.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I would say I have a little different approach, and that is to be,
That's good too.
um, edgy, punchy, and just basically be like people are here.
You
You know,
haven't
like
came across
we
edgy or punchy at all since this little conversation.
yeah, well, I bet I have when I said that,
Oh yeah.
all religion is bullshit. I mean,
That is true. That probably
th-
wouldn't be considered edgy.
that, yeah, but the thing is that, um, it's provable, right?
Mhm,
I mean, like if you read, Yuval Harari, *Sapiens*, I mean, he's a historian, and
mhm,
he talks about, what has made humans very, very powerful on this planet. And one thing is that they can, like we were saying before, we can agree on something that makes us a group, and it really doesn't matter if it's true or not. And that's, extremely powerful. And then the other thing we have is that we have our understanding of the physical world, science, which allows us to make things like nuclear bombs and skyscrapers, and you know uh, and so we have these two things, and it just makes us, incredibly powerful. But one of them is just believing in bullshit together, and
mhm,
the things that are just completely have no, relation to reality are religions, but also countries and companies and things like friendships. It's all made up. These are all just, and it's linguistic basically.
yeah.
And
I mean,
and
you have a
and
very academic take, and a lot of people are not going to be as critical as you are on that approach. I mean, I understand it, but if you try telling that to somebody in a rural red state, they're going to be like,
I
okay, yeah,
have
whatever, whatever. They're not going to listen to that. That's why the
I
rhetoric
have
is important.
I have, and, let's see, the last time I did that, my brother's sister-in-law told me that if I ever come to Arkansas again, she and her family are gonna give me a redneck ass whooping.
Okay. I was like, ooh. Hey, just make it fair,
I
one
had
on
to
one, one on one, not that
yeah,
whole
yeah, right.
gang at
No,
one.
no, no, not, not one-on-one. I don't do violence, but I'll have a conversation with them.
Yeah, no. No, I
Yeah,
mean I know.
but I had to explain, redneck ass whooping to my children,
I'm like, I
what
would be
that
like, all right,
means.
yeah,
I'm
I'm
not
a
actually sure
two-time
what it
state
means.
champion with wrestling. Come
Yeah,
on, let's go.
can
Let's go
yeah,
ahead and
but
have a referee there so no
yeah,
one gets hurt that bad, but someone's
yeah,
going
yeah,
to leave hurting. I
yeah.
mean,
But when you said like, I haven't said anything, edgy. This, I mean, my strategy is this: is that, when I meet with somebody and I start talking to them, I identify if they're sincere or not,
mhm,
and you can tell that. If they are, then, that means that they will allow their opinion to be moved by good argument,
mhm,
which I can as well, and that's how and I mean that's what I mean, that I've, even with people who can do that,
mhm,
over the past, what, 7 years of working on this project, I don't think I've ever, convinced anybody of anything, or anybody has convinced me of anything, but our arguments, our positions have moved. And
mhm,
that's what you do when you have an argumentative conversation,
mhm,
because you have to define your terms. And so things like abortion, I've moved, I'm, grew up Catholic, and so I was always against abortion. But now I would argue it should be rare and safe, and
mhm,
that would be the best. That's the best argument. And like with, there's hardly any, there's a very low gun problem here in Germany, but in the States it's horrible, and
Yeah, there's
um,
school
but
shootings or school
yeah, but
quarantine, like in your
yeah,
classroom.
yeah, but I was quite convinced by Sam Harris's argument on guns, and that is that there's just too many guns to get rid of them in the States, and you would have to
Yeah,
go
yeah.
about it a different way. And he just has good arguments about that. And so I've moved my arguments, but I haven't really been convinced of anything 100%. That just really doesn't happen. But the reason to have arguments is to move your opinion, because you have to
Mhm,
define your terms, and then you have to resolve conflicts. So
mhm.
if somebody is sincere about resolving conflicts in their head, then um, uh, I'm very cordial and but firm, and will
Direct.
make arguments. If somebody shows that they're not sincere, then there's all kinds of tactics to I'll just bullshit them twice as hard as they bullshit me. That's basically the game plan.
Mhm.
Just because they'll take advantage of you then.
Well,
You know,
that's possible. I mean, it just depends how the conversation goes. I like verbal judo, so I try
yeah.
not to use profanity because, like I said, I use it as an arena of ideas.
Mhm,
And if I could just manipulate a conversation where it clearly shows that I'm in good faith and they're not, I'll just
mhm,
point it out. It's like, hey, listen, man, I gave you sources. People can decide by themselves and read what I put, and they could read all your comments. You
mhm,
know what? I'm not going to convince you, but maybe I'm going to convince other people by who choose to read our little thread. And
mhm,
if you're proud of what you say, good for you, dude. It's a free country. And
mhm.
I know I'm a good advocate for what I
Yeah,
believe. Have a good
yeah,
one.
yeah. But I mean, the way I see that is that, I mean, yeah, it's a free country, and other people can believe what they want, and so you can have all kinds of Scientologists and QAnon and flat earthers, and then these people are going to be. I mean, if you just have cordial conversations with them and say, look, I disproved your point, but then nobody cares, they're all going to make your laws that you have to live by.
Well,
You
that's a
know,
good point because that's what I would probably argue with Jimmy Dorwood. He makes the other side look like they're my equivalent, like the Boogaloo guy. Should I go with his mentality that might make my laws or hold him more accountable, which he didn't do?
mhm,
And that's the same criticism they have with Joe
mhm,
Rogan as well. He's allowing other people that will allow to make laws and have influence and putting them on this level ground, what's already been
mhm.
proven to be more
Yeah, yeah.
effective. And Joe Rogan doesn't hold them accountable. So no one's going to be perfect, and we have to accept that. I know I mess up and I probably should hold other people accountable, but it's not really my job to do a podcast. I just do this on my extra time because it's
Mhm,
important. And I feel more people should be willing and more open to do this. But no one's perfect. You know what? We're all going to
mhm,
make mistakes. And as long as we humanize the journey that we
mhm.
all want to make this country a better country, the world a better place, we have to change ourselves. And that's why I always put more ownership on me than
Mhm,
my politicians because they're going to do
mhm.
what they want. They're out of touch. They're around people that have significantly more money than I do. So for them to just be their hand on the ground and just know exactly what's going on in their
Yeah.
communities, that's not realistic.
Yeah, I mean, the two-party thing is a major problem in the States. And I know here there are like five, sometimes six, sometimes seven
Mhm.
parties that you can vote for that get over 5%. I mean, you can have, I mean, there's, like the CDU, which is basically the CDU CSU, then you have the SPD, and then you have the Linke, and then you have the AFD, which is a far right party, and then you
Mhm.
have the Greens, and then you have, like, they had the Pirate Party for a while, and like two or three
We
other
have a lot
parties.
of parties in this country too, and there's
Yeah,
factions within
but
the two
but
parties as well.
yeah, but you can't vote for them. I mean,
The
I mean,
independents, the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, I mean, they're just not viable. They're just not
yeah,
a
but they
realistic to
they don't
win.
even get, but they don't even get in the debates.
Well, they could get into local elections, and a lot of people in the United States don't pay much attention to local elections, to state elections. They only pay attention to the general elections that run the country. So I
I
think that's
mean,
the
do
people's
you see,
fault.
like, locally? Do you see numerous? numerous parties. I mean,
So, I mean,
I vote in Colorado, and
mhm.
on that ballot there were
They're not supposed to
the
disclose their party affiliation in some local elections, are they? I guess it depends on the
yeah,
state.
I don't vote in local elections. I just vote in the presidential election.
Hmm.
But there were there were like 32 people to vote for,
Hmm.
officially. But I looked every one of them up, and like 27 of okay, you had the two major parties, and so you had like, okay, 28 left. Okay, like only three of them were even somebody who I would even trust
Yeah.
in business.
Well,
I mean, one person running
mhm.
said that he wanted to connect um call what 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 was it, get together with New Mexico and Texas and
Yeah, and
Arizona,
Gary
or
Johnson,
was that him?
was the
And
candidate, the governor for New
he
Mexico. He was a libertarian.
yeah, and he wanted
He was a
get
libertarian and won that state. People just need to run in local elections. There's socialists that run in local elections, but they don't get the media coverage. And they came close to winning. So if you wanted to run that third party route or an alternate party route, start local and
mm,
gain that momentum to the
yeah,
general. Because Bernie Sanders was an independent. He was a mayor,
yeah,
and then he became a senator, and he ran for
yeah.
president. So you have to start from the ground up. And that's
That's
always been
interesting.
the
Yeah.
momentum here in this country from the women's suffrage movement. A lot of major changes happened from the most disenfranchised minority groups in this country.
Mm.
Civil rights happened with African Americans that
Yep.
had to organize. I mean, that's just how it
Yeah,
works.
but like ever since the Jimmy Dore Boogaloo Boy
Mhm.
interview, I haven't seen anything like that.
No,
I
yeah,
mean,
and I agree. There's some value in that. I'm not
I
trying
mean,
to.
Joe Rogan interviews, a lot of his buddies, a lot of
Mhm.
his comedians, um, interesting people.
Mhm.
Um, but it would be interesting to, bring on a QAnon nutcase, a Scientologist, a Mormon, somebody from
But
Pfizer,
hold them
I mean,
accountable and
and hold them
challenge them.
accountable. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm. And
For
Joe
3 hours.
Rogan doesn't really do that as much as a lot of his criticism is, that he doesn't really he did do a pretty good job with Jordan Peterson, I think.
Yeah,
He was
I
like
was just going to say
disagreeing
that.
with
I
him.
was just
Yeah.
going to say, like he would say, wait, you're not finishing your sentences. And
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson it really doesn't, because his mind is, I mean, he's quite a,
He's a very smart dude. I
he's a
credit him.
fascinating, yeah, and he does a lot of research, and he's very articulate, so that was just more of, oh yeah, please help rein in my mind, and I'll finish any sentence you want, so
Mhm.
that was just more, cordial, more technical. But like, I mean, AOC, yeah, she reminds me of some of the dingiest cheerleaders that I went to school with. I mean, she has no business making any laws. That's, I mean, huh? I
Well,
mean,
what
when you hear
specific
her
law?
talk,
What specific law do you disagree with? I know there's some things on the Green New Deal, but overall, that's going to help infrastructure, and overall, that's going to help with environmental regulations and all that, which I think
yeah.
you're a fan of. But does she come across cringe? Yeah, I can't defend her with some of her
Well,
dinginess.
yeah, but I mean, just not effective. She's in there just like having a good time, making a lot of money,
Mhm.
and probably doing what Pelosi tells her so that she can stay in.
Do
I
you think
mean,
she helped with the momentum with $15 an hour wages becoming more popular?
I don't know.
A lot more
I,
companies are
I,
lifting
I
their wages up because of Bernie Sanders and AOC and all the momentum from progressives pushing that. And a lot of unions are
yeah.
gaining momentum from there, bringing that attention. I mean, she has the connection with the youth. And I think one issue we have in this country is a generational gap. A lot of older boomers, they're really stubborn. And I
Mm.
just feel like, no offense, I don't even know what generation I mean, I'm not a millennial, I'm a little bit
I'm
older.
55. Yeah.
Yeah, so the boomers, in my opinion, and I've heard older generations criticize them. It's like they were the millennials of their time. They had a good economy. They had
Mm.
like, I mean, I'm not saying everyone's life was easy, but I remember one of the people I worked with when I worked for Citicorp. She was like 60, almost close to 70 at the time in 2000, and she was like, "Oh man," because I worked at collecting
Mm.
debts, credit card
Mm.
debt, and she goes, "Oh, just wait till the boomers retire, dude." I'm like, "What?" So I didn't really appreciate that
Mm.
comment until now,
Mm.
and then there's a lot of tension because the population that make up the millennials is equivalent to the boomers. So I think it's the goal of the media to create so much chaos between those two demographics.
Mhm.
So problems don't get solved. And I think what plays into that is them constantly criticizing AOC. You know, when she does make her mistakes, it's going to be put under a magnifying glass. But did she help the momentum for $15 an hour? I think she did. Is she pushing for environmental changes more aggressively to get mainstream attention? I think she is. And that's pretty much the job of a politician, to be a cheerleader for policy. It's ultimately up to us to empower more people, to put more people in power, to get those votes, to pass that kind of
Mm.
legislation.
Yeah, you
She's done
you you
too.
might be right. I just don't know a lot about what she does,
No, because what you see in the media,
but what I do know is I see her talk,
right?
and I see her in all of her softball interviews where
Mhm.
she'll be allowed to just create this word salad that is like that somebody would say who really hasn't studied much. You know, it's just like, oh. And
Yeah.
then, I mean, put her on the Joe Rogan show or something equivalent where she has to make sense unscripted for 3 hours and be interesting. I
I
mean,
think
I
he would be
think
pretty
I
charitable with her. I think he would. I think Joe Rogan would be pretty charitable with AOC because he's kind of on the left. Joe Rogan's a leftist, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, they might agree on policies and stuff, but I just mean I'm mainly just talking about intellect or um,
Have you
articulateness. You
looked at
know,
some of the GOP leadership? Have you look at Boebert in Colorado?
Bobert. I'll have to look him up.
Yeah, no, it's a woman. Have you looked at
Okay,
Marjorie Taylor Greene? I
yeah.
mean, but they don't get put under the microscope like AOC because
Well, but that's what I mean. Get AOC
Lauren
on there,
Boebert, yeah,
and after she goes, then put what's his name? Bobert? Or her name?
it's Lauren.
Bobert?
See, that's really interesting to me because a lot of people know AOC. Why? Because the media. I mean, if you're doing something right, you're going to get slandered, like Joe Rogan. I mean, there's some
Yeah.
takes where it shows him looking like a dummy right now because what he said in the beginning of the pandemic, how he was worried. They're trying to
Mm,
disparage his character of showing him showing his hypocrisy.
mm,
And everyone's allowed to change your mind. He changes his mind. That's fine.
mm.
But Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene are some wackadoos.
Ah, Lauren Boebert, she's the one who has like that restaurant or something where they have guns or
Yeah,
something,
and
right?
Ted
Where
Cruz putting a piece of bacon on a freaking machine gun. This is how we eat bacon in Texas. Tasty. But AOC is the crazy one. Okay.
well, no,
I know.
I mean, I just line them all up. They're all crazy. I mean, and they aren't
Fair,
crazy.
fair.
They aren't crazy. They're corrupt, shallow, and shouldn't be our representatives.
Hmm.
I mean,
Oh,
just to put it neutrally. And the thing is, what I see from somebody outside the culture is that um, there's too much corruption to even look around it in the states.
mhm.
And one problem is simply the two parties. That's what I was getting at with in Germany. You have 6 or 7 parties, and what happens then if you don't get what happened to the Republicans in the states, where um, there's if you're for one party or the other, you you don't have any other choice. You basically just have one choice. So somebody like Trump can rise in a party and overtake it.
Mhm.
Whereas here, you have people with people who can create their own parties. So they start as a small party, and like the AFD, they have they're basically this party of stop immigrants and build walls and kind of right wing kind of things. And they got up to 15, 16, 17% in some um, um, elections. Then they get into lawmaking, and people see them making laws then, and they're not very impressive. And so their numbers go back down to 13, 12, 11. But they don't overtake a major party, like which is what happened in the States. I mean, in 2015, if you went back to 2015 and told people what's going on, that that Trump, who was a clown back then, basically for
But
most people.
Trump ran on populist policies too. And
Yeah.
he just lied about it. And people are desperate to, hey, I had a conversation with this guy named Trump from Nebraska, Trump supporter from Nebraska, and he
Hmm.
worked in an area where he was working with coal mines, and
Okay.
Trump was the one that's supporting his, his occupation.
Because there's nobody else. I mean,
Exactly.
there's nobody else.
And he admitted Trump's
I
an
mean,
idiot. He's like,
yeah.
Trump's an idiot. And then plus he's getting caught with Epstein and all that. So he was pretty transparent with
Right,
Trump's flaws.
right,
But
and that's why you need to have conversations with the people, and just out of love for them, say, look, if you say you voted for Trump and he's an idiot, you're in conflict unless
mhm.
you are admit you're an idiot, right? I mean, just logically, right? I
Well,
mean, you
he
know,
was thinking that he would maintain his job. That's his daily, I mean, that's his
well,
livelihood there.
yeah. So then he has to explain it, and then the conversation
And he
gets
did.
interesting. Yeah,
Mhm.
and then the conversation gets interesting, especially if it goes on and forks for an
Mhm.
hour or 2 hours, right? But AOC will never have a conversation like that. She'll have a scripted conversation,
She
and
will probably. I
if
can't
there's any
defend her.
and if there's any hardball questions, then she'll say that that was hate speech,
Mhm.
and
Do you have any
it
examples where she's made those accusations other than just saying the Republicans are focusing on her woman, her attractiveness?
mainly just what from Jimmy Dore digs up of videos, usually from the guy on the gray zone. What's his
Mhm.
name?
Uh,
Um, but he goes to these like he went to the this vigil that they had on the steps, AOC and the others, and
why are they so fascinated with AOC? That's just really interesting to me. It's like they are obsessed. I mean, I would
well,
like how
yeah,
you and I both agree, have a balanced approach. And there
yeah.
doesn't seem to be a balanced approach with that. That's just my opinion. It seems that there's a
Well,
bias.
it could be. I think one reason is because um, AOC said in December last year, we need to be rude, we need to fight, we need to, push our votes or push our agenda, da, da,
And
da.
that's
And
probably
then
a
it came,
failure on her part for not following up with that
yeah,
aggressive tactic.
yeah, and then Jimmy Dore sees it as, and then it came time to push the vote, say we're not voting for Pelosi unless you do this, but then they wouldn't do it,
But that's an interesting part. I think when AOC was
and so
saying we
he
need to
kind of got
be,
burned, I think.
yeah, no, well, I mean, Jimmy doesn't really like justifying his takes either.
Right.
And, with that particular drama, I think this is just pure assumption on my part. As a politician, you're going to go in there going with guns blazing, and you have your own ambitions that you want to do
Mm,
good for the people that got you into power. But you're going to be faced with the realization of the power that's going to be facing you and the power that you have to take on. And you're going to
mm,
realize you can't do it by yourself. And you're going to realize you're going to have to do some things that are just going to get you some W's, I guess, politically. And you have to play politics.
W's or what?
Unfortunately,
W's?
wins instead
Okay,
of
wins. Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
So, unfortunately, she probably had to realize and mature as a politician, really realizing that she has to be political, and that's not
Mm,
always going to be something the public will understand.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's why I like
But
Sam
I just
Seeger's approach. He's like, you have to grease the wheels, and as long as you're advocating and keeping it on the top of people's mind, and I know the criticism for that, and Jimmy Dore doesn't realize that when he was pushing to vote for Pelosi, this is amongst Democrats.
mhm,
Pelosi polls really well with Democrats. It's just like not a strategic battle to waste your political capital on.
mhm.
So you're going to go ahead and bite the hand that feeds, which is the Democratic Party monster, the DNC. And, is that going to hurt or help your momentum for pushing what you're trying to push? It's a game of chess. I
Mm,
mean, you're just like, should I give
mm,
up my queen on this move, or should I just be more strategic and wait for another time to put them
yeah,
in check? I mean, it
yeah.
stinks. And, but she's the most progressive politician we have. And is it something that I'm thrilled about? No, especially when she was crying with the Iron Dome with Israel when she voted for that. And Jimmy Dore probably tore into her. But I was like,
Yeah, but I mean, really, rightfully. But yeah, you're right.
yeah, I agree.
He should tear. But I think what would make his show more authentic is just to tear into her, tear into Cruz, tear into Biden, tear into Trump.
But he plays
But
friends patty cakes with Tucker Carlson too. He's been going on Tucker Carlson.
yeah,
Where does he hold him accountable?
yeah, he doesn't. You're right. You're right. It's just, I mean, what one needs to do, and that's what I like about the German culture is you hold your waitress accountable and she holds you accountable and everybody's bitching
Hmm.
and you get on a bus and if you don't have a right ticket you get bitched at
Hmm.
and it's just okay because people are letting out their, you know, they generally don't trust strangers, which you probably shouldn't, and you should
Well, you
teach your
earn
kids
someone's
not to trust.
respect. You got to earn that privilege of
Yeah,
having someone to trust
and
you. That
just
makes sense. It's
it's just
logical.
yeah, it's just fine. I mean, one of the best things that on a personal note that happened to me from 2013 research on Facebook and basically everybody I knew defriending me, blocking me, ignoring me, da, 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 is that through that, I mean, my family here, we just became a lot more critical of each other because
Mm.
I'm as critical of my wife and my kids as I am of anybody else. If they bullshit me, then they get bullshitted back, and then it's you keep each other honest. But in the States, my experience is you try to keep somebody honest and they're gone. They don't talk to you anymore. Like AOC, won't have any hardball conversation, won't have any hardball interview, won't do it.
Yeah.
Fauci won't go on the Rogan show. Why not?
Fauci gets grilled by Dr. Rand Paul all the time. They have those debates.
Yeah, but those are soundbite debates. I want a conversation 4 hours long between Rand Paul and Rogan and Fauci, all three of
Mhm.
them together,
That
and
would
then
be
and then
nice.
Trump. I mean, uh, you know,
But who
get
does that more? You'll see more of that on the left than the right. Nobody on the right. Ted Cruz is no, it's not going to go on any show that holds him accountable. Any of these, Trump himself walks out of interviews. That's
right.
more something you'll see from our right wing area than the left. I mean, yeah,
Well,
sure,
both. I mean,
more
I
on the
mean,
right. I'm not going to see any right wing. Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't do interviews like that at all. Lauren
she
Boebert won't.
couldn't. She
No,
couldn't. She would be. I mean, she couldn't talk to somebody like Sam Harris.
I mean, look at
It
you.
would.
You're not on the right, and I'm talking to you. I can't get anyone on the right other than just communicating me with memes to have a conversation with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
That's a problem. Well, I'm a registered Republican and a Catholic.
mhm.
If that's
Well,
the,
well, I mean, you're
but I mean,
considerably more on the right as a Republican than most Republicans here in the country.
yeah,
So right there, just I mean, it's
yeah.
interesting. So is there a reason why you chose to register as a Republican just to like
No, it was just I grew up in Colorado and we were all always pro business because everybody in my family started a business and
that
we
makes
went
sense?
low taxes and that was just always the Republican
It's true.
thing.
I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
benefited probably more as a small business owner with some of the
yeah,
policies through Trump. And a lot of people want to say, well, you're racist. That's why you vote for Trump. I'm like, no, there's good reasons to be a Republican. And we'll just settle those differences at the ballot
yeah,
box, you know? So I have
yeah.
no qualms about people voting Republican.
Yeah, but one thing about the German multiple party thing, and it's basically most countries here have multiple parties and
Mhm.
strong parties that you can actually vote for, and they're in the debates and they're official parties and not
Mhm.
just fringe parties who don't get invited in the debates or Bernie who just got snuffed out. I mean, he would have been somehow in
He'd be
in
a
in a party
moderate.
here.
He would
Yeah,
be a moderate.
but I mean, what would have happened is the Democratic Party um, would have basically split. You would have had Biden and Bernie, and then a lot of the Trumpers would say, "Look, I want all that social stuff. I want my kids to have, the stuff that he's talking about, free education and stuff. Cool." And not Trump.
Mhm.
And a lot of, I just think if somebody could create a some kind of party that halfway makes sense, like the People's Party. When I listen to them, they more or less, um, I mean, they at least they sound honest for
Mhm.
like 5 sentences in a row.
Mhm.
That's not anything that any Republican or Democrat really does
So
anymore.
we
They're
can't rely on politicians. We have to do it. People,
exactly. So why is anybody
Joe
not
Rogan
100
is.
not 100% critical of politicians? I
People
mean,
like Joe Rogan, bread tubers, they're
yeah,
having these conversations. That's part of the process of doing it. It's
yeah,
just going to take longer and it's going to be harder because we don't have the platforms or the money to go against the $1 billion interests of all these corporations that already bought off our politicians. We're going against
Yeah.
Goliath
I
right
mean,
now.
that's a question that I see here. It's a kind of sentiment is that in the States, why do you guys vote for Trump? He's an embarrassment. I mean, he's
Well,
just a clown.
you're a Republican. Did you vote for him?
No, as a
Okay.
Republican, I voted um, for Hillary, even though she's just a liar warmonger.
No, I
Just
agree.
because I didn't want to vote for somebody who had already taken part in an all-star wrestling match
No,
in which he shaved somebody's head off. I just don't want somebody like that as a president.
I hear
And
you.
bragged that he grabs pussies, and that was all over the news, and nobody cared. I'm just not part. I'm just that's not my ethics. And then
Would you consider
so
yourself a moderate then?
yeah. I mean,
So
in the middle.
civility and
Yeah.
decorum is, I just made a video about talking about this. And I felt like
Cool.
decorum is something that really matters to people that are moderates and centrists. And that's
What
like
is decorum actually? What do you mean by that? Like,
being proper, being a good example, a
so.
good, yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's something that really matters more to people that are moderates and the people
Hmm.
that are probably on the fringe, on the left and the right. We want to see, like Jimmy Dore. Do you think he cares about decorum? He's like, no, I want some ass kicking. But it's just
Yeah,
interesting.
I'm more like that, I think. I mean, I just completely believe in free speech. I just think free speech will solve most problems. It does in small groups and it can in
But
large
you're
groups.
criticizing Trump for utilizing that free speech. So that's what I'm just saying. I mean,
No,
he's like,
no. I love his free speech. It's just that other people don't use their free speech to counter his free speech. I mean, he's just like AOC. He doesn't have any interviews that aren't scripted. He'll
mhm.
walk out of interviews. He won't go to national debates. The first president in history, I believe. And uh, he needs to talk more so we can see what an idiot he is and
Well,
and
people
and and
know that he's
counter
an
him.
idiot and they're going to vote for him anyway because they feel like he goes against the status quo. But he is part of the status quo. So every
Yeah,
time
but the interviews that I see him in now, I mean, he's just being fed these like it's like you know
that's obvious to you.
it's as if it's a comedy. And the thing is that that was a point of this book by George Cecilin is that you can't. I mean, politics is moving into comedy, and comedy is moving into politics. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and a right winger would probably say he's pro freedom. He's not going to make you get controlled by the government. That's a lot of their comebacks
Mm,
when they talk to you. And I'm like, well, when you get those free checks, you're not going to be held down to debt by Joe Biden, because he's giving you more economic freedom to go ahead and
mm,
do something with those child tax credit. So I don't understand. Do you
yeah.
prefer like being free to get sick and then getting a hospital bill that's going to be something that we're going to see you on GoFundMe on Facebook? I mean, you're going to
Yeah,
be
really.
free,
Yeah.
and then but you're gonna have those economic ball and chain on you because you're gonna have some money and you'll have freedom when you get money. And all that money goes back into our economy and it circulates to smaller business and they benefit. So
Yeah.
that's like a big talking point. I think the
I think
Republicans.
you're right. Yeah, I think you're right there just needs to be millions of these conversations where people are held accountable. Like
Make you
for
think.
instance, like all of the military people that I know in the States just are so patriotic and against socialism and stuff. But look at the American army. Look at them. They're basically in a little socialism.
Yeah, and
You know,
they're
they get their houses given to them. They look like East German state
and,
apartments.
and one of the things that a lot of people don't know with our history with the GI Bill, a lot of African Americans were denied that for after they served in the military.
Exactly.
So, all
Yeah,
that
exactly.
patriotism, serving your country wasn't equivalent to everybody. So, that's the
Yeah.
systemic issues that we can see with the Black community. When the Black
Mm,
Lives Matter, a good informed Black Lives Matter activists, I'm sorry, they
mm,
could go ahead and articulate that case. And that does hurt generations,
mm.
So, instead of just pulling the race card, saying you're racist, you're white, you're blah, 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 that's not going to get people to listen. But if you say, hey, there's somebody that served and didn't get the GI Bill, what's up with that? And it happened to be because of the color
Yeah.
of their skin. You're gonna probably get some patriotic right wingers say, yeah, that's not right. We got to go ahead and give them their, there's going to be a few that are going to say, well, so what?
Yeah, and if you have these conversations, it's just irony after irony that you find.
Yeah. And then I feel
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
why a lot of my family members are afraid to have those conversations because they don't want to be proven wrong in front of everybody on Facebook.
yeah,
And I have no
but
problem having conversations and I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong too. But that pride,
yeah,
which is a sin, most older people don't want to get told or put in their place by someone that's they're younger than them,
yeah,
or they saw
yeah.
you as a child and they're like,
Mhm.
they can't accept that, man, he might be right. And I don't want to prove that I'm wrong, get proven that I'm wrong in front of everybody.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but if you keep free speech going, then
Mhm.
I mean, I would just like to see millions of really messy conversations that don't get canceled. You
But
know,
yeah, no canceling. But do you think Germany has a free speech like the United States?
well, I mean, there's even, I mean, on the books, there's even less free speech here. You
That's right.
can't, you legally can't deny the Holocaust. And I believe that that was basically, instituted by the Allies and
Mhm.
just adopted as a goodwill thing,
Well, do
but
you
it's,
believe in some kind of regulations, so at least due to the good policies and well thought out policies of Germany that could be applied to the United States and still, encourage critical thinking?
I'm very adamant about free speech, just because it's a and what I mean by free speech is not just the freedom to make noise or the freedom to talk, but the
Mhm.
freedom to be critical of a group. So, like you need for a healthy relationship with one person, you need
Mhm.
free speech in it. If someone you want them to be critical of you, and you to be able to be critical for them, and that they don't say, "Look, if you're going to say that, I'm not talking to you." That's a violation of free speech in my definition.
Mhm.
You violate the principle of free speech. And so if you're like in a company and somebody says something that you don't think is good, and you criticize it, and you're sent a note by the human resources department and says, we would like to talk to you about what you said, and that we will not have that kind of language in our company. They're violating your free speech within that company.
Mhm.
So it has nothing to do with the First Amendment. The First Amendment was just one agreement between a government and its people, and it's just one instance of free speech. But free speech is a principle that we protect because it is a tool to expose and eradicate corruption.
Yeah, I mean, I
And
agree.
and and the thing is, if you meet somebody who doesn't encourage people to be critical of them, which pretty much I don't know any American who really does. I
Mhm.
mean, ask any American. I mean, this is one of my things that I did on the research is just, in a conversation, ask people, do you believe in free speech? Oh, yeah. What if somebody comes to your house? Do you allow them to say anything you want? Oh, no, no, no. If they say something I don't like, I show them the door,
Mhm.
you know, and you'll hear that with everybody. That's just common, you
Mhm.
know, but you know what? That's what Stalin said
Mhm.
with his house, the country, or, the nation. You can say anything you want in my nation, but if I don't like it, you'll find yourself with a rope around your neck.
Mhm.
I'll show you the door. you know
Yeah.
Siberia. you
No,
know
I
it's the same concept, and so you just realize that people are quite fascist in their, nice people, neighbors who will lend you their lawnmower with free speech. They're quite fascist, actually. They don't want people saying things like you just said. They don't want anybody younger than them telling them about any contradictions in their head. And they have all kinds of ways, and there's so many ways in the States to shut people up.
Mhm.
There's religion, there's politics, there's patriotism. You just have a lot more space there as well. You just go move somewhere else.
Mhm.
Um, Whereas in Germany, everybody's living here together, and we don't really have gated communities or anything like that. Everybody lives together basically in every city, so you have to get along, and that's why people are just more outspoken, and there's more emotional spikes that you see, but people talk more, and things get resolved quicker,
Yeah,
it seems.
I think my take as far as like having those tough conversations, if you build a relationship with someone in the United States, they're probably going to be more willing to open up to you. But it's just not something that a lot of people are willing to invest in to gain the trust to have those conversations, and that's a skill. I think that's probably a universal skill probably throughout the world. You can't just be able to tell people and challenge their beliefs. It's their beliefs, their identity. It's no longer, I guess, their belief, I guess. Let me go ahead and erase that. It's their identity. They identify that as who they are. So when you do that, it's personal. It's so personal for them. So you have to get that trust. So it's no longer something they necessarily believe. It's who they identify. I'm a conservative. I am religious. That's me. So it's more personal. So I guess when you start seeing things that way and understanding and forcing yourself to understand that, which is not free speech, you have to adjust to their needs.
Mm,
But unfortunately, that's just what it takes.
mm.
And when I have
Yeah,
those
yeah.
conversations with people, when I understand, okay, I understand that it's who you are, that's who you believe. I'm not trying to trample on that, but if you're patriotic, which one of these wars was something that defended our nation's interests? Because I've
Mm,
seen you criticizing we shouldn't be the police of the whole world. And once you develop that kind of questioning, I feel like they'll open up and they'll
mm.
be like, yeah, man, a lot of those wars, we shouldn't have been there. Too many people died. And I was like, so why are you so patriotic about us sending our troops to get killed? You know?
But
So
what happens I mean, at some point, I mean, I understand that um, you talk with people cordially. You say don't use.
talking to
Um,
strangers is a little bit more difficult. I can talk to people
okay,
I know more cordially.
yeah. But I mean, like in any conversation, what happens when you confront them on a contradiction that has to do with their belief systems, with their person? I mean, like what you just said, they're saying, we need to go fight wars, but then they also said that they don't like to see their buddies get killed, and you
They'll
point that
agree
out to
with
them.
me. They'll agree. I mean, one thing when they do decide to have those conversations, it'll be something they have something knowledge about. So they'll be able to have something. But if they're fundamentally wrong,
Mm,
I'm pretty good at digging and finding examples of their hypocrisy because I was a right winger.
mhm,
So I know how they think. So I'm just like, okay, well, you value the lives of our troops. Would you consider going to a war that we were lied about? And you even said yourself, I mean, that was a talking point of many Republicans. We shouldn't be the world's police. Let's get out of here. And that's
mm,
something that you embrace. And, a lot of lives were lost then. And they're
mm.
not going to disagree with you. But, they're going to be criticizing Joe Biden for being a war hawk. And a lot of people voted for Trump because he was anti interventionalist. And they like that about him. So I'm just like, you know,
Like, do you see people moving toward just criticizing both parties?
yeah, because Trump's losing momentum. DeSantis is like getting more momentum over Trump, the
Hmm.
governor from Florida. And
Oh,
it's
yeah,
just
okay.
really interesting to see. I mean, because there's a split, there's a big civil war in the Republican Party. Trumpism versus
Well,
the
there
conservative
there ought to be.
Reaganomics. Yeah. And then the same thing in the Democratic Party. There's the actual leftists and the limousine liberals, so
Mm,
it's
yeah.
really
Mm,
interesting to see people have that division within the parties. That's what I was saying. There's parties within the parties,
yeah. Well, I mean, I've in my Twitter conversations, that's basically where I'm most active now. Um, I just kind of get the feeling that's where the TNT is you can quite quickly get people to agree that all politicians are corrupt. You know,
Mhm.
and that's why I try anytime I criticize Trump, I'll criticize Biden in the same sentence.
Yeah.
Or if I criticize Biden, I criticize Trump in the same sentence. And that just seems to get, I mean, people, you get everybody will agree with part of it, you
Mhm.
know, and then people our politicians are starting to get so corrupt and so obviously corrupt they won't even have conversations.
Well, we
They
just
won't have
started
hardball
having these
interviews.
conversations now. I mean, people never talk politics. So we're witnessing the American
What kind of time frame are you seeing on that? Like in the past year or a past decade or what?
2016 is when I've seen more people get more engaged on social media.
Yeah, I mean
Uh,
that's when I started my book with
yeah,
my with my
that
friend.
was
Yeah.
it. That was it because Obama
Mm,
was leaving the White House. So that got pretty much the whole world's attention.
mm,
And other people were saying, hey, man, it's a fresh start. I'm going to get my skin in the game. You
mm,
had Bernie Sanders, and then you had Trump even talking about running at that time, so it's just like a lot of new characters were coming up. So more people paid attention.
mm,
And now that we have Trump in hindsight, we could hold our fellow right wingers accountable. And I'm getting a lot of them to concede about points about with Trump. And a lot of people that are following me on Twitter are people that voted for Trump, like Clay. And I mentioned him in my newest
mm,
video that I just made today, and I put it out.
mm,
He's all about decorum. He's a moderate, and he doesn't want to vote for Trump if he runs again. So it's very
mm,
interesting because I intentionally seek out
mm,
centrists and moderates because you're not going to change an extremist. It's a full blown Trump QAnon person. I mean, you could use that arena, having
mm.
that debate with them. And that's what I do with this one guy that's a singer songwriter, 5 times August. I don't know if he's grifting or not, or if he's really believing in that kind of the right wing, but I
Mhm.
always use him to get other people's attention. And I used him to get the people that are following me now on Twitter. So it's just,
Mm.
I don't have a big following, but it's a start. And if I were to not say anything, I wouldn't have anyone following me. It's not
How do you get your interview? I mean, like conversations like this, I would think I would just love to see. I mean, and with Zoom, I mean, you're recording this, right?
Mhm,
And you'll just put it out. So it's just a conversation of two guys talking with
exactly.
two different. And I'm sure we've said
But are we
something
two
interesting
different
along.
perceptions? I mean, we actually agree on a lot of things more than we disagree, I think.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, I really would like to find some things we disagree on just to see where they are. And I mean, mostly when you disagree, I think you that's when you find out why do you disagree. And like, I'm much more like your kids.
Yeah, it's my daughter. What's up?
Something happened to my butt.
Your butt?
It's
Oh
red.
man, it's red. Okay, I can't help you on that right now.
Take take care
Okay,
of that one.
say hello.
Hi.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and help you here in a little bit. So we're gonna have to probably make this a part two. I've
Great.
really enjoyed the conversation, and I think we should focus on more things we disagree with, so we could actually explore that in
Yeah,
better
and
detail.
I think we'll stay in the conversation. That'll be a good example as well.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, hey, it was really a pleasure speaking with you,
Yeah,
and
really.
I look forward to the part
Emilio.
two. Yeah, Emiliano, and
Emiliano.
yes, and it's all good,
I'll
Edward.
remember
And
it.
hopefully everyone's doing good in your family, and I look forward to
Yeah.
the part two. So I'm gonna go ahead
Okay.
and help with this butt problem here in a little.
Do that.
All right, have a good one.
I'm all done with those problems. See ya.
All right, see ya.